Via Skype is Dr. Webster Tarpley. He's an author and historian. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Dr. Tarpley. Now, first of all, as we just mentioned over here, the narrative seems to be extremely complicated and has some sort of discrepancies. There's the fact that this was an Iranian Shia man who fled to Australia, then converted to Sunni Islam, then radicalized and showed sympathy to Hizb ut-Tahrir, al-Nusra, and even ISIL. What do you make of it?
Well, I would say, first of all, we have to look at him as a mentally unbalanced murderer, quite possibly. In other words, he was apparently a murderer or was suspected of murder in his private life before he ever got into this area of terrorism where we've seen him today. And that is to say, his former wife was found stabbed multiple times and her body had been set on fire. And the two prime suspects who were then arrested were this guy, Man Haron Monis, or Sheikh Haron, as he called himself. Haron, I guess we can call him that. Haron was jailed for the murder of his own former wife in this tremendously brutal manner. He was accused, and his girlfriend was thought to be the one who was perhaps even more active in the murder than he had been. So normally, murder, that's a very serious charge. But nevertheless, here we see a guy who's let out on bail, and that is extremely suspicious. It means, for one thing, that the local intelligence agency, and that is the ASIO, the Australian Secret Intelligence Organization, the ASIO, could have pulled him back into jail anytime they wanted. And quite often that's a way you can run a Patsy. In other words, a mentally deficient or mentally deranged individual can be manipulated by the simple idea that they'll put you in jail if you don't do what they want. Now, as you say, his connection with Iran is simply that he was born there, but then almost 20 years ago, he moved to Australia and then also made this religious transition. I would guess, based on what we've seen, that he went from Shia to Takfiri, in other words, some very militant and dubious sectarian brand. And then the flag that he showed, and I thought this was quite interesting, that is the Nusra flag, and that is, in effect, the Al-Qaeda flag. And the news coverage in the English-speaking world says, oh, he wasn't from ISIS, as if that were okay. The Nusra, of course, the branch of Al-Qaeda, that is a very active branch of the Syrian terrorist rebellion against Assad. And then, as you've said, Haron was on Twitter attacking Iran and President Assad of Syria in the same breath as terrorists.
Right.
Now, that leaves us with the following thing. Either this is somebody who has been radicalized in a more or less sociological way by the fact that there are 90 people from Australia that are fighting in Syria. 20 of them have been killed, we're told. Maybe he's the guy who sent some of them to go there. But again, given the very aggressive character, the very shameless provocations that are staged by this ASIO, I would think that it's more complex. In other words, that this is in fact a provocation, a rather crude one, but launched. I would look, first of all, to the ASIO as somehow being involved in this. And then you have to look, what is perhaps there's an internal political reason. Perhaps it's an attempt to try to sabotage the nuclear talks with Iran, or some other thing.
Right, I'm going to have to stop you there, Dr. Tarpley. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I would like this conversation to continue later on. Of course, that's Dr.
Sure.
Webster Tarpley, author and historian, joining us from Washington. As always, thank you very much for your comments here on Press TV.
Thank you.